I was just checking before we came on air what day of the week this was. And again, I say on Pat McArt's verification, this is Monday. So a lovely good morning of a Monday to you all. Would that be you echo those words, Pat?
Absolutely, Jude. It's an absolute scorcher out there. It's unbelievable. What's this? Jude, is this 21, 22 days now straight?
Oh, I could take this forever, Pat. I know it is screwing up the planet, but if we could get past that, I would love for this to be all the year round. It just cheers me up. Cheers me up no end.
Somebody said, if this is global warming, bring it on.
Aye. Okay, let's address some of the matters of state that are pressing on us. Let's start with the one that everybody's talking about. And I heard Nolan was on about it this morning again. And that's John Finucane's address to the South Armagh volunteers who had died during the Troubles. What's your take on that? There was people ringing in very, very angry that he would do this and detailing the violence that had been done to loved ones and torture and shooting and God knows what. So what's your take on that, Pat?
Like I always start these conversations by stating I never really supported IRA very much, but put it like this: a lot of the official condemnation from unionism I find totally hypocritical. Like, Jude, let's get started. They condemn violence all over the place. These unionist guys, a lot of them have used this whole threat of violence for a long time. The whole northern state was born out of the threat of violence. So that was unionism, the gun running into Larne and all the rest of it. Paisley was seen going up and down the sides of mountains with the third force and so on. And just watch any time there's a threat to the union, loyalists, there's a lot of saber rattling by loyalism and with the tacit support of a lot of unionists. And let's get that on the record. Right, that's the first point. Secondly, I have seen it in any society, Jude. This is a conflict situation in Northern Ireland, has been for years. There's two narratives, and neither the twain shall meet. And the simple thing is, many nationalists were brought up in a state, with the usual, where they were seen as the enemy almost from day one, and a lot of people decided that they would fight against it. And Jude, when you're brought up in a society where it's always you have to repeat these things all the time. I'm sounding like John Hume, but no, then the police force was 93% Protestant and Unionist. Whatever the B specials and all the rest, 100% Protestant and Unionist. 50 years of Unionist government. You can bet your life somebody's going to rebel against that. And by the way, Jude, the other thing, see in 1968 when they took the street, as Chris Donnelly pointed out in Nolan the other day, there was already 6 Catholics shot dead or killed by the RUC. So, Jude, and then of course the violence inflicted on the marchers on the October 5th. Jude, there's a guy called Gay O'Brien. He was the cameraman from RT. He got that. And in those days, it was too, it wasn't instant. You had to take the stuff back to Dublin and get it processed and so on. He took that on a Saturday evening. It wasn't shown until Monday night on RT. Once it was shown on RT, what he got, it went across the world. So, by the way, Jude, that's all the sort of background. And then when you add in all the bigotry and the discrimination and the bias and 50 years of unionist rule, just turn around and say, oh, by the way, you were not allowed to oppose this. Oh, violence was wrong. Jude, I am not a big supporter of violence, but I understand where people are coming from. And I think the hypocrisy, every society I've ever known, you're allowed to commemorate your own dead and allowed to honor your dead. And that's the way it is.
I think there's two things, Pat. One is a question of using violence to achieve political ends. And the other one is the commemoration of the dead. So let's start with the political violence, using violence to achieve political ends. Dare I say it, everybody does it. Everybody does it. That's what's happening in Ukraine at the moment. You might say, aren't they heroic, the Ukrainians? And there's a good case for that. But they are using violence to achieve the political end of getting rid of the Russians out of their country. Is it November the 8th? Every November, there's commemoration of the British Army in the various clashes it's had around the world, as far as I know, going back centuries, where they are commemorated and honoured. Now, that's not
Good.
something I would have much sympathy with, but it is consistent with this notion that all everybody in the world, as far as I don't know any country doesn't have an army. And if you have
Yeah.
an army, what's it for? You clearly believe in
Yeah.
violence under certain circumstances. So this
Yeah.
notion of people putting out appeals, and a number of unionist politicians have done this. That it's time that that the Republicans and nationalists saw that the way to solve problems or differences was not the violent road. The road was sitting down at the table and discussing. Well, that's exactly what people want to do. They want unionists to sit down at the table and talk about the future. Anyway, so that's a political violence part of it. The other part of it is how you celebrate or how you commemorate or how you mark or honor or whatever those people who were engaged in violence during a conflict and who are now dead. Now, there is no doubt that those who were on the unionist side or the British side, they have been honoured and will continue to be honoured for what they did. And many people see them as heroic, trying to keep the peace and stop evil men from doing things, men and women. And that's fair enough. But they resist the possibility of the side they were in conflict with doing the same thing. And I think the reason for that is that unionism has never seen the conflict as anything but a sort of a mass psychosis. That these were mad guys that somehow sprang up and that had to be crushed. And I heard a guy on the radio the other day saying, and they lost the war, thank God. Only when I think unionism recognizes that as far as Republicans and nationalists are concerned, they understand that these people were involved in violence and they simply want to mark their what they've done, I suppose, and honor them. When I was a kid, Pat, let me go way back into the dim and distant past. I went to see the movie The Dam Busters. Remember that?
Yeah.
Remember The Dam Busters? And they dropped these bombs and there's a great theme tune to it. Oh, God, it was marvellous.
Cheerful.
It never struck me that these guys are bombing a dam. Now, there's been a dam bombed in Ukraine and huge damage it has done for the civilian population.
Yeah.
I would assume the same sort of thing might have been the case in Germany when the Dam Busters came in. So it seems that people forget that they're saying violence is okay for political ends as long as it's our violence, and honoring the dead is okay as long as it's our dead. It's this insistence on resisting the notion that there might have been any kind of legitimacy other than gangsterism that the IRA was involved with.
I think, Jude, you've summed it up perfectly because that's near enough where I'm coming from. Jude, the loyalist organisations commemorate their dead. The police commemorate their dead. The UDR commemorate their dead. British Army commemorate their dead. Who have I left out here? British intelligence commemorates their dead. There was a conflict here. So, deny legitimacy to the Republicans. By the way, you're not allowed to commemorate. They were crazies. They were gunmen. They were psychopaths. Jude, there's a story. I'm not going to get into the details, but there's a woman I know. Her son was shot dead by the British Army. I know that wee boy's aunt, and she told me growing up he was the most gentle, sensitive as wee fella. But after the Battle of Bogside, when in come the cops and they beat the crap out of people and all the rest, that young fella joined the IRA. He was shot dead some time later. She said he wasn't a thug. He wasn't a psychopath. He thought he was doing the right thing for his community. And there are plenty of others. The other thing as well, Jude, 10 people died in hunger strike. Does that strike you? Is that gangsterism? No. Were a lot of those people not motivated by sort of nobleness or of some kind? This sort of, and by the way, Jude, let's look across the world. 1916, that was a rebellion. French Revolution, that was a rebellion. The American Revolution, that was a rebellion. Most countries got their freedom by rebellion using violence. So let's stop this sort of thing and saying, unionism wants, with the help, by the way, of some people in the South, particularly politicians, want to use a narrative that this was, senseless violence and so on, so on. Jude, the violence at the IRA did not come out of a vacuum. That's the big thing. There was a political context in which it came out. And look at South Africa. Nelson Mandela said he tried everything to get it, and they eventually used violence. Now, fortunately for him, he was able to turn off violence and negotiate with de Klerk. But originally, they had to use violence.
Mm. I think there's just one last thing on this, because we could go on it all day. And the last thing is this, that during the Troubles, it literally was dangerous to stand too near to a Republican. In other words, if you were, say, a Sinn Féin election worker and putting up a poster or something, you could be shot dead. And some of them were.
Yeah.
So to stand too near to Republicans was a danger. It now seems that years after the conflict ended, it's whether it's dangerous or not, I don't know, but it's certainly disapproved of that people should stand too close to Republican dead.
Yeah.
So John Finucane is being lambasted. They're saying, how does he not know better? He himself was a victim, and now he's re-traumatizing all these people. Well, if his attendance at the memorial for the IRA in South Armagh was traumatizing people, what do you think people feel who see the RUC being honoured, the British Army being honoured on a yearly basis and televised as well? Yeah. Are they not re-traumatized? I think the simple thing is...
You see, Jude, there's no gainsaying the pain of a victim. There's no, if you've lost a son or a husband, I'm not disputing that. But what I am sort of saying is this hierarchy of victims, or this sort of, I don't know what the term is, that our dead should be honoured, your dead should be condemned. I don't buy that. This was a civil war situation. It was a conflict situation, and there was genuine reasons for it. You don't have to agree with, but the reality, that's the way it was. And Jude, I as you say, we could keep going on this all day. Jude, if every nationalist who had a son or a daughter shot dead in a sectarian kill, or shot dead by the RUC or the British Army, or somebody spent years in jail on trumped up charges where the evidence was very dodgy, they are all victims as well. And there's another side to this story, and this sort of thing. The Glenanne gang was infiltrated by the British Army, the RUC, and the UDR, and they killed how many? 140, 120 Catholics. Let's get real here.
Okay, here's my final comment on this. You mentioned a hierarchy of victims. I actually don't think there is a hierarchy of victims. I think that unionists, certainly unionist politicians, from what they've said, seem to see the people who were killed by the IRA as certainly being victims, or any other Republican violent group, but they don't see those IRA men or women who were killed by the British Army or by the RUC or whatever. They don't see them as being in the hierarchy of victims at all. They see them as, you died, you're an IRA man. You deserved what you got, essentially. That's the message. Yeah. So they're not on the hierarchy. They're not even on the list.
No, Jude, you see, that's why the Nolan show, Once Upon a Time in Northern Ireland. Remember the night David Frost did the interview on the Sunday night, and the group of hardliners from Shankill Road come on. It was good. After Bloody Sunday, it was good Sunday. They should have shot more. Jude, that's the attitude.
Yeah.
Still is an attitude.
Well, I have to commend. I heard a clip of the speech by John Finucane, and I thought it was very, very good, very measured, and very firm. And I didn't see what quarrel anybody could have with it, but clearly, some people are very, very upset.
Just when you're on that, I shout out to Chris Donnelly on Nolan last week. I didn't see it at the time. I saw it afterwards. Chris was excellent on the very point that we were talking about now. He was very, very good, and fair play to him.
I think he was passionate. I think there was a passion in his voice when he was speaking about it. And you do get to that stage very quickly. The danger is that you slip into just, abuse maybe, or you'll be so angry that you'll start speaking wild statements. Chris didn't do that, but I am always fearful of that. Anyway, let's move on from Ireland and just across the water. And Nicola Sturgeon. Nicola Sturgeon has been arrested. Somebody
Yeah.
sent me an email or a message, I think, and they said, just imagine if that had happened in Russia. You would say, oh, what's this? They're arresting political figures. Whoa. So they're presuming they don't like people who oppose the views that they have on how the state should be run. That was my correspondent's instinctive thought. What was your instinctive thought, Pat? What's your view on her?
There's something. This is a 2-year investigation. I would love to know why they arrested the leader on a Sunday, so, on a quiet day, so that it would get as much publicity as it possibly could. She was held for 7 hours. She has come out, by the way, and she's issued a very strong statement saying, I am absolutely certain I have done nothing wrong. Jude, that does strike me as very strange. Police are arresting a former leader of the biggest party in Scotland on a Sunday morning. Why a Sunday, Jude? It struck me as a sort of deliberate, almost propagandized way of arresting somebody. On a busy Wednesday afternoon, and so on.
Does any parallel come to mind?
Well, not off the top of my head, but I'm sure you're going to tell me.
I am. Do you remember there was an election coming up, and about 4 days before it was being held, Gerry Adams was arrested?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And his complaint, one of the complaints he had was, well, he complained about the food, but he also complained that he had told them that he was quite happy to go and talk to them or be interrogated or whatever at any point. But they didn't do it that way. They came, I think, to his house, and he was put under arrest. The way that Nicola Sturgeon was dealt with, I thought, and the whole Sturgeon family was rather similar. Like, you saw all these cop cars, and then this famous tent that was erected in the garden, which, you thought, my God, what's behind that? Are they digging up bodies? That was the first thought in my mind. So it does seem that they have heaped on as much publicity of a negative kind possible into this.
And the other thing is, look at this. It's been investigations going on, for 2 years?
Yeah.
She's been charged with anything yet. You'd think at this stage they should have charges, they should have evidence, you would think. And by the way, the other thing you mentioned, remember in Russia, every time, about 2 weeks before an election, Putin's opponent suddenly gets arrested on trumped up charges. So you sort of wonder, anyway. By the way, the Tory government, nothing would surprise me, and I mean nothing.
Well, do you think that this whole furore is an effort to torpedo Scottish nationalism? There's
allegedly 600,000 missing. Fair enough. If there is a crime, fair enough. But Jude, you see, when it comes to the SNP and this whole thing, it could be 100% politically motivated. It totally could. I just don't know. Like, why I'm suspicious, and I'm not big into conspiracy theories, but if the Scottish police have had 2 years to look through the books, you would think there would be a smoking gun of somewhere. Oh, her husband, which, by the way, has stolen 600. Nobody, he hasn't been arrested. He hasn't been charged. The treasurer, you think 600 missing. The treasurer must know. Surely he should be charged, and so on. It's all a rumor and innuendo. And there are a lot of people, as far as I can see, getting smeared, and there's no evidence against them whatsoever. So I'd like to, is this politically motivated?
Whether it is or isn't, do you think it has done irreparable damage to the Scottish National Party?
Right now, yes, but
long term,
irreparable. If it turns out that none of them are as guilty, it could be very interesting how they rebound back. The only thing is, Jude, as you say, by that stage it'll be too late.
It's a very interesting one. I was thinking about it, and I was saying, no, it's just supposing that Nicola Sturgeon and company were guilty as charged. Now, I'm not saying they are. Make that clear. I'm not saying they are guilty. But if they were, I think it would have a very negative impact on the whole Scottish independence movement. And I'm going to say now, I think it would be, if that had happened, it would be wrong. It's an instinctive thing, but it would be totally wrong. I would compare it with what was the leader of the who wanted home rule at the end of the 19th century? And Kitty O'Shea.
Roger Casement. Was it
No,
not?
no,
Roger.
no, it wasn't. Not Roger
no,
Casement.
not Roger Casement.
Although he used a similar
Kitty
thing
O'Shea,
with
remember?
Roger.
What? Kitty O'Shea. Remember? What was his name? Jesus, Jude, I know who you're on. I remember he had the affair with Kitty O'Shea, and that ruined him.
It'll come back to this. But anyway, when you
Yeah.
mentioned Roger Casement, the same thing applies, sort of thing, because they find these notorious diaries that he had kept, and lots of people said, "Oh, these black diaries are a frame up." My point again would be that even if they were, why would that discredit the Irish national independence movement? Because
Charles
you have
Stuart
leaders
Parnell,
who are
Jude,
bad, even they are
Jude,
bad.
hold on. Jude, hold on. Charles Stuart
Parnell.
I just remembered.
Jeez. If you'd even read James Joyce, you'd know that. Anyway, yes. And he was that whole movement, no question. The bishops came down on it and folded, forget it. So no home rule because this man had an affair with
And had an affair with a married woman. Yes.
Well, that's an absurdity. That is an absurdity.
Yeah.
The same way I would say it's an absurdity. There are many people who would say the Catholic Church, look at all that pederasty was going on. Look at these abuse of children and so on. Well, yeah, that's fair enough. But in many cases, I'm sure it's well merited. But what has that got to do with your religious belief in a God and belief in a church? I just think that there's too easy to. I think it's a natural tendency, but it's a big mistake to go with personalities. Personality does something. Oh, great! So therefore, the cause must be great. Personality does something bad. You say, oh, the whole cause is screwed up now. It shouldn't be. Yeah. It shouldn't be. But I don't think that. I think in practice is going to be very bad. Anyway, let's move on to a few other things. I got and I think I sent it on to you, an email or it was an email, I think, from a man called Anton de Bruin, and he asked a whole lot of questions. Can you remember some of those which he sent?
Not off the top of my head, Jude, because I didn't get a chance to. But Jude, look, can I change the agenda for a minute?
Yeah.
What do you make if you were a loyalist? What would you make, or Jamie Bryson or the TUV? On Saturday, the Irish Times announced that Stephen Donnelly, the Minister for Health in the Republic, is to fund 250 nursing places in Northern Ireland that the Northern Ireland Executive or Assembly can't fund. In other words, the Southern government is funding a Northern Ireland project for Northern Ireland. Would the thought occur to you, is this a deal agreed between London and Dublin? And it's a wee warning to the DUP. There could be more of this coming down the track if you don't get your act together. Would you see a conspiracy theory there, Billy?
Yeah, yes, I would. I'll be honest, I would. I think it's like the A5 and their contribution to the A5. They're saying, well, it runs up as far as Donegal. But, there's a lot of it runs through the north as well. And for the South to be putting money into it is indicating not just a friendly interest in the north, but in an unspoken terms, it's saying, we're linked with these people. These are our people, etc. So, yes, I'd be concerned. But, it's a weird thing that you'd be concerned that the South is giving money to the North. For God's sake, we've been living on money from England for since the state's inception, 10 billion. And they're proud to shout that from the rooftops that, we're getting all this money. Well, that's the cost of the union, or
but you know what struck me is Heaton Harris give the same budget as last year on the full and certain knowledge that it was totally inadequate. Inflation, the war in Ukraine, the cost of living, increase in wages, everything. He knew it was totally inadequate, and then suddenly in steps the Dublin government to pay for something that they were axing. And I was thinking, there's a very subtle message here coming down the track, that whole concept of joint authority. And suddenly Dublin's funding things in the north, and you go, oh, that's interesting. Now, and if I was, as I said earlier, a certain bent or a certain unionist thinking, I would be sort of saying, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, there is also, of course, that when a politician does something or says something, he usually has an eye on the next election. And I'd imagine, was it Micheál Martin or was it Leo Varadkar that did this?
Stephen Donnelly.
Oh, Stephen Donnelly. Well, what party is he? Is he Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil?
Fianna Fáil.
Fianna Fáil. Well,
but Jude, this is unprecedented, and
it is, but it wouldn't. Well, it is and it isn't, Pat. It's unprecedented in terms of these places for nurses or whatever, but it's not unprecedented in terms of the South interfering or contributing to life in the North in a positive way. And as I say, the A5 is a good example of it. And there's other sources like the Ireland Fund and so on from America. But again, I sympathize with Jimmy and these guys because it does weaken. You know, the more involved the South gets, whether in terms of moving towards joint authority or whether being supportive of the idea of a citizens' assembly and eventually a border poll, all of these things are sort of little milestones on the road to a border poll. That's how they would see it. And I think they're not totally wrong. I don't want to be too cynical about it now. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. And I'm sure the people who get the places will be more than glad. In fact, they'll be delighted. But if I was Jimmy on the sideline, I probably would be upset too. Would you, Pat? Would you not?
Last couple of weeks back, I was listening to the BBC radio program at 4 o'clock. The radio program, the news program, and Professor Deirdre Heenan was on it. She said she's a professor, I think, in sociology or whatever it is at the University of Ulster, and she said the cutting of those places for nurses was insane. That there's already a massive deficit of nursing in Northern Ireland. And it's how they're funding it at the minute it's costing a fortune to get them from this, what they call the banking system. In other words, nurses make themselves available when it suits them, not when it suits the health service. And she says it's so expensive. And she says to be cutting places now is absolute madness. So what I thought was not odd, but I thought, now the Southern government stepping in to provide funding for 250 Northern-based nurses. There you go.
Was the British government did that cutting? Yeah, must have been. Yeah. Not a smart move and a shrewd move on the part of the Southern government. Stephen Donnelly is a weak figure. I think would that be true to say that he's got a lot of
But anyway,
do him a favor.
Talk about a poison chalice on the South. When they offer you the Minister for Health in the South, you may as well say I'm going to lose the next election. But go ahead.
Well, they landed Michelle O'Neill with that in the North here, and it kind of worked backwards. It didn't do her any harm. Okay, Pat, we're getting short of time, but 7 minutes left. But you mentioned this thing about working from home, and it's it's been on the agenda for a long time. What prompted your thoughts about it for today?
About a couple of weeks ago, myself and my dear missus went up to the youngest son. We went up at midweek about 11 o'clock or something in the morning. And he lives on an estate, the big housing estate up in Letterkenny. And I drove in and noticed, Jesus, there's a car outside every door here. And years ago, you'd see people have driven off to work. And then there's my dear Mrs. going, she's Pat, they're all probably working from home. Now, this morning, I saw a thing in LinkedIn. It's the professional organisation for business and working people. And it says, Ireland, now there's a considerable drop. It's down to about 10 or 11% the advertisements for jobs to work from home. It was 48%, but I assume that was during COVID too, Jude. That was some of the. But Ireland is still one of the main places for remote working. But Jude, the reason I brought it up is that is a massive, massive change in the way we live. When you don't separate your work life from your home life. Jude, when I left here in the morning, I went to an office where I met different people, spent all day, came home in the evening, got me dinner, met my kids and played with the kids and when they were small and so on and so on. But I had two distinct lives. I had my home life and my work life. I go up to my son, and he's one of these computer guys, and he works for a big company. And I know Judy works from, I think, about, sometimes I see him on there at about 9 o'clock in the morning. And I went up one night and at 7 o'clock, he was still working. I thought, this is insane, Jude. And I'd like to know what the implications that are for home life, for family life, for your mental well-being, for, the whole society in which we live.
Yeah, well, speaking of children then, my son, whenever I said to him, this is a couple of years ago, I said, people are able to work from home. What do you think? And he said, oh, God, say it isn't so. The very
Yeah.
thought of being at home all the time. I think I thought at first, bloody marvelous. You save yourself a commute, you save money
Yeah.
that way. It's just more efficient. You don't have the distraction of colleagues and gossip and wasted time. But in fact, it would do your head in, because I actually, when I think back, getting to work was good. Getting to work was good as far as I was concerned. They used to talk about doctor work. People wouldn't be feeling too well, and then they go to work and they feel better. So you can't just throw out the baby with the bathwater. I think most people, most firms, have now arrived at a kind of hybrid, and maybe 3 days a week or even 4 days a week in the office, and then a fifth day or the fourth and fifth day at home. That sounds to me like a nice kind of compromise, or even half the weekend, half the weekend. Because there are advantages to being at home and working for work as well as for your relationships with your family. And there are advantages to being in work for work, as well as your dear wife saying, thank God he's gone away for the day.
Jude, you know the thing about it, if you're driving to work and it takes half an hour to get to work, see in the morning, not 30 minutes, maybe you're listening to the radio, you're getting your thoughts together for what you need to do. It's me time. Now, if you're in the morning, you're getting the kids out to school and you never leave the house, then the next thing you're on a computer all day, dealing with this, dealing with that, putting in codes or what the hell you do. I don't even know what computers do these days. I was thinking that couldn't be good. Where's the relief? Where's the respite? And all that sort of stuff. So a thought occurred to me. Those who are coming after us are going to have very different lives to what we had.
Yeah, I think it'll work itself out. I think it's a good idea. If you think about it, it's sort of daft to say to people, if you could work from home, to say, I'd like you to travel for half an hour and we'll all get together in a place and then we'll work. That kind of rigid separation of the two seems to be not a good idea. But I'd see certainly how for your mental health and so on, and for the work itself, cross-fertilization of ideas and so on, there's an argument there too.
Jude, it's great. Can I move you on to someone else? I'm interested in your opinion. Silvio Berlusconi died this morning. Apparently, he was 86. He was I think, the prototype that brought us Donald Trump and Boris Johnson. He was a flamboyant billionaire. By the way, he's survived by his, I think she might be 25, maybe 35, your old girlfriend. He was apparently he was Italy's richest man and so on, but he was a shameless self-promoter.
He was a mate of Tony Blair as well. Remember Tony Blair? Tony Blair went to his yacht for a holiday. Yeah. Sorry.
He was up to everything. He was more than friendly with some mafia types. He used his media empire shamelessly to promote himself. And he broke the mold. The days of the technocrats and the professional politicians. This was a politician as a populist. And what's your views on Berlusconi?
Well, you see, I have always some difficulties with this, because I used to argue to my daughter that Boris Johnson was an effective politician and an attractive politician, because when he came on the screen, you couldn't but look at him, and very often he had something witty to say. I think I'd still say that to some extent, but the harm he's done, the policies he has adopted, the lies he has told, more than compensates or more than outweighs any positive things. Berlusconi, he had a sort of a glint in his eye and a sort of a sneaky smile. And the Italians, and not just the Italians, have an attraction towards the strong man who will charm us and who will look after us. You think?
Yeah.
It's that tradition of simplify politics by having one big guy. And that's Trump's thing as well, of course.
By the way, here's the final thing, because we're only a minute. What do you make of Manchester City winning the Champions League on Saturday?
Whoa. One of the lousiest matches I've seen them playing. I thought they were crap. I thought the guy's Rodri's goal was very good. Very, very good, in fact. But I thought Haaland was pretty well useless. I thought the Man City goalkeeper was very good. They were dead lucky. They were dead
Yeah.
lucky.
Jude, I loved. I don't know if I've got time, but I remember Pep Guardiola said it was written on the stars, and somebody says no, it was written on the checkbook in the United Arab Emirates. That's what your victory was based on. So on that note,
Leave it at that, Pat. Leave it at that. I couldn't
all the best, Jude.
possibly top that one. Okay, Pat, thanks very much.
Good,
Talk to you again.
good luck, Jude. Bye.